Hey Life Groups, in week 2 of our Hope Lives Becoming Good Relatives series this week, we get to hear from Lori Warkentin, who is a longtime part of our church in our Vineland location. She leads our Becoming Good Relatives team and has for years, and also works at Mennonite Church Canada, working towards Indigenous justice through the church. And she had a conversation with Adrian Jacobs, and Adrian is a Haudenosaunee leader. He's from the Turtle Clan of the Cayuga Nation and is connected to the Six Nations Reserve out in Caledonia. And as a leader who is just willing to come and speak to us and share with us this week, which we feel very fortunate to have heard from him. And in their conversation, they spoke about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They spoke about the need for truth and reconciliation in Canada and why have we needed that and what does that look like. They started with a conversation where Adrian described some of the history that we've heard about, but hopefully are willing to continue to, in an ongoing way, learn more about the residential schools and that history. I mean, the schools came from the place where they were naming that they wanted to kill the Indian in the child, that they actually wanted to kill a culture. They wanted to kill where Indigenous peoples were coming from through these children. And that children were taken from their families and brought into these spaces with that as the explicit purpose. And these schools came from a combination of the government and different welfare agencies and specifically through churches. A number of churches were involved, including the Mennonite Church, in 2 instances of residential schools. Adrian Jacobs talked to us about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That from 2008 to 2015, there were 7 national events that were held by this commission that gave an opportunity for survivors to be able to share their stories. And the language of survivors was important to Adrian, naming that this commission is a survivors commission who are sharing from what they've experienced. And they got to tell stories and to share what they'd experienced. And for Adrian, as he taught us, the fact is that we don't necessarily understand, and people didn't understand then, the depths of what was happening. And that's the need for the truth in this truth and reconciliation work. The truth is incredibly important, and that's an ongoing work to hear these stories and to learn about what really did happen. And Adrian talked about the fact that part of the reason that it's hard to hear that truth is because these are the waters that we're swimming in, and like fish in those waters, we don't necessarily recognize the truth that's here and around us, and we need to have it named for us and to learn. Adrian talked about the fact that coming out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was not only named that here's what happened, but also that we need to be able to move in a direction of reconciliation. And the specific way that that was done in the TRC was through the calls to action. And these were 94 calls that were given to very specific action for people in Canada. There's 5 of them in particular that really apply to us as church communities. Numbers 48, 49, 59, 60, and 61. And they had to do with repudiating the doctrine of discovery. That is, letting go of the worldview that led to this type of action taken against Indigenous peoples, the dehumanizing effect, and being able to instead adopt a humanizing perspective of each other. We need to be able to lean into educating ourselves. We need to lean into connecting together and partnering with Indigenous peoples to be educated. And we need to connect our finances to Indigenous peoples to be able to move towards the development work that they are doing themselves. Adrian named that this is not something to blame or to cast guilt more deeply on Christians. And he actually named, he's like, I think that Christians actually live with quite a bit of guilt as it is, or they carry it in ways. But instead that this is about, in the words of Adrian, healing relationship. From there, it's the need to practice relationship, that it doesn't just happen out of good intention, but it happens out of intentional practice, and it happens in the work of reconciliation. That we need to transform how we think through being continually educated, doing that work of education ourselves, going to the places where it happens, listening, and responding to the calls to action. That was a little bit about what we got to hear from Lori and from Adrian this Sunday. And we hope you'll be able to have great conversations and dig more deeply into that together.